What's up, y'all? Figured I'd make a little quick video here. Here in Mount Juliet in Nashville. Waiting to get unloaded. 40,000 pounds of this shit. So, zombie apocalypse. There's a place in Nashville that's fucking loaded full of them. Gave me a bunch of them for free, and they don't taste that great. Yeah, it's been an alright day so far. Kind of rainy here. Picked up this load last night at BNSF in Memphis. Barely made my appointment. Had to do some stuff to make sure I had my 10-hour break in order to make the appointment. And, you know, I got a call from safety. Not saying what I did was right. But also I was given one load yesterday to pick from today. And I had to drive back, you know, about 4.5, 5 hours yesterday. And it's not my fault. The BNSF just does their shift change at like 6 o'clock and it goes to like 8 o'clock at night. I mean, it's like you never know when the crane operators are going to get there. And I can't really leave the container just unattended. Some companies will let you just drop them, but I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to verify, like, yeah, we got on the railroad tracks. So I waited and waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. Eventually, I was like, fuck it, you know. Like, I should get personal conveyance. I'm supposed to, according to my company. But I have to earn it. And it's kind of weird the way that, like, I'm with Dart. And Dart's cool, like, don't get me wrong. They're cool. But I'm also, like, in an umbrella company, Mainstream, with them. So Mainstream has a different authority number, different everything. My dispatch different. I guess the only way that I'm really kind of connected to Dart is safety and maybe payroll kind of stuff. I don't know. But I have to call Dart in Eagan or Texas for a few things, but nothing when it comes to my money or what I do, or anything like that. It looks like they started unloading me. Finally got the red light. But, you know, and I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not knocking the safety guy. Like, he did his job. And, like, you know, I'm sure day one of his training is like, this is going to suck. Like, you know, you're the guy that calls people to say, hey, I'm putting you on a safety hold, pull over, you ain't driving today, whatever, you know, that, I feel for him. That fucking sucks. And I mean, and when I saw that number, I was like, motherfucker, I knew I was going to probably have to have a conversation, but it was one of those, like, you know, a lot of the conversations I've had with safety are like, a lot of these things are out of my control. I like, you know, if I get held up at a receiver and I'm sitting in Nashville or something and I've got to wait, you know, 10 hours till I can get my load, it's gonna fucking suck, but I'll do it. But I was almost damn near across the street, like 4 or 5 miles. So and all I did was leave the BNSF after they took the container, and I parked the chassis and just went to my terminal, and then drove home. Still got a 10-hour break, by the way. You know, so and if you can't say that wasn't personal conveyance at that point, you know, it's a DOT. I see what you mean in the court, according to the FMSCA, or I always fucked up saying it, but yeah, I think I said it right. I don't know. All these alphabet organizations, they're bullshit. In the name of safety. I mean, look at the ATF, y'all. Look at the FBI. Do you think they're really trying to protect us? Anyways, I don't like government. I'm sorry. And I'm putting this on YouTube, and that's, you know, people are, you know, I see the purpose of government in some ways. A lot of people do need help. a lot of people can get ahead, and they need assistance. You know, like if you have a kid and you're a new parent, you lose your job or something, there should be programs to assist you. I understand that. If you're mentally disabled, should be programs or physically, you know, programs to help you. But there are a lot of people that are taking advantage of that system that probably don't need to be. And to me, trucking is a very capitalist industry. You know, truckers, we built this country in a way. You look at a lot of the old super trucker guys, they're the ones driving the fucking 389s, 379s, W900s. Like, you know, they're killing it. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say they're killing it, but they're the guys that they're decked out. They could afford that stuff back in the day. Everybody had one, and they were all chromed out, and they were still living in pretty nice homes. They were working their asses off. And the more regulations we started having, the worse things started to get for truckers. You know, I mean, it's in some ways, okay, yeah, you're not forced to drive when you're tired now. You're not pushed to your breaking point. Okay, there are some advantages, but for the most part, like this 11-hour, 14-hour shit, the personal conveyance stuff, it's I'm show me statistics and like talk to multiple drivers, and how many of them will say, well, yeah, you know, I've driven like 14 hours in my personal car when I'm on vacation. All right, you know, like to me it'd be like, let's set some limits. Let's say like 14 hours is our longest we can work in a day, and we still have to get a 10-hour break. That's appropriate. You know, nobody really should be, I mean, even if it was like you can only work 12 hours and you can only drive 12 hours, that's a 12-hour day max. You know, if we should be doing things more like the FAA and how they regulate aviation, but instead we're I mean, and obviously aviation and trucking are very different, but they're very, very much the same in a lot of ways. I mean, to say that a truck driver isn't in some ways a pilot of the road, you know, I mean, I've got a FAA dispatch certificate or license, and it's been a minute since I've looked at these regulations and stuff, but I believe it's, you can be scheduled, or you can work more than 14 hours in a day, but I think in one shift you can only be scheduled 14 hours. And in between, you have to have like an 8-hour break or something like that. So, you know, and it's the same thing with a pilot. Like a pilot can work more than 14 hours in a day, or more than 14 hours in a shift, I believe. But you have to have a break in between. So, you know, it's like you're going, I don't know, like Washington to Tokyo or something like that, you know, or Seattle to Tokyo. That's a long ass flight. Same thing with, you know, LA to Sydney, Australia. You know, and that might be one that you have another pilot on there to just assist for like 2 hours or 3 hours. Or you know, I mean, I don't know how they actually do it for pilots. They might say, yeah, I'm going to work, you know, 8 hours. You're going to do, you know, 9 or something like that. I don't know, but there are flights out there where they're like 16, 18 hours, and somebody just swaps for just a couple hours. Obviously, it's different with team driving, but what I'm saying is, you know, I think there's a lot of drivers that could say, yeah, I could work 14 hours in a day. I wouldn't say a lot of new guys could do that. They would want to make that money, but I think a lot of seasoned guys are like, if I want to run, let me run, and I'll stop and park for, you know, 10 hours, 8 hours, whatever, and I'll get my sleep. And if I feel like shit, I'll tell the company, yo, you know, push back the appointment, something. Like, you can be responsible and also push yourself. I mean, almost all these drivers out here, we all talk about, well, we gotta make that money, work hard, hustle. All right, cool. Like, we're willing to do it, but it's the companies and it's the government and the regulations that are holding us back. You know, I mean, they're the ones saying, no, you can't drive so much. No, you can't go this far. Like, they're putting limits on us. And I mean, to some extent, there should be. We have to still be safe. But at the same time, in like the scenario I was given, all in all, the round trip, I was right at about, you know, 10 hours, unless there was like, you know, a wreck or something. I think I got back with 45 minutes or something left on my clock, you know, as far as drive time. And then after sitting at the rail yard almost 2 hours, like I was like, I'm going to go into, you know, past my 14 hours. And they don't, like, the 16-hour rule's gone now, apparently, you know, and not that any companies really recognized it. Very few did, you know. So here I am waiting, and I only have, and the only load I was given early in the day was this one load up here to Mount Juliet. And I had to be here by like noon, you know, so I had to leave at like 8 at best in the morning, you know. So like, I'm like, whatever, you know, I got to do what I got to do, and I'll make it work. And, you know, if I got no other options, like, what am I supposed to do as a truck driver? Say, well, you know, if I can't get any other loads for the day, you know, and I only have one option, and I'm not going to make money. I mean, I don't condone what I did. I'm not trying to say like I'm some cowboy and, you know, everybody else should do that shit. But, you know, right now, there's a lot of drivers that are like, you know, if there's work, I gotta work. You know, I'm a lease operator. You know, I gotta make some money. I gotta pay for the truck. And I have weeks where I do make good money, and I do, you know, pay for the truck, even sometimes after 2-3 days of just loads. But I'm wanting to get ahead. I'm not wanting to get by. You know, and the thing with the safety guy that I talked to is, one, I don't think he had all the information that was available between the account that I'm on, or technically the company I'm with, versus Dart. You know, I've got a different authority number. I've got, I can only pull rail yard loads unless they get like Uber Freight stuff. So, you know, and that's normally not a problem, but there are some slow days and some slow weeks. So, you know, it's like, I gotta work, I gotta run. And he's like, well, if you gotta just float around Kentucky, wait around a day or two until you can get another load. And I'm like, the load I'm given, I have to return to the same location every day and drop the container. Occasionally, you know, like if I had left this place in Bowling Green, and, well, no, I took an empty up there and I had a loaded trailer, so there's nothing I could have done anyways. Yeah, so right there, you know. I don't know, but, you know, I obviously I wasn't in the mood to talk to him this morning, and I, you know, there's probably every driver he contacts, it's probably the same thing. There was another driver from, you know, the account that I'm on that apparently had to go there and had to physically go to the safety department. And really, let's be honest, like, safety at most of these companies, they're not there for you. They say they're, you know, you drunk driver hits you, and, you know, you were within hours, like, we're going to defend you, we're going to look at that camera and fight for your ass. Really? Really? Think about it. If that drunk driver survives, or their family wants to sue the company, and they realize, like, you know, yeah, our kid had an alcohol problem, you know, but, you know, he was a good kid, and we need money for the funeral. We need money for the medical costs. And this is a multi-million-dollar trucking company. Who do you think is more expendable? Do you think they're going to spend $1 million, even just $1 million in court to fight that drunk driver? No. I mean, at best, maybe they settle out of court and say, well, you know, here's 50 grand. No, we know what you got. They want at least 100 grand. You know, and who in the end is the one that gets blamed? You know, the truck driver. We get blamed for everything. Doesn't matter what it is, you know. I mean, and I get, like, the regulations are supposed to be sort of what protects us. You know, it's supposed to be, well, he was driving within hours, he couldn't be fatigued, he couldn't be sick. Yeah, but, you know, it's like, I mean, drunk driver hits you, somebody T-bones you that just runs a red light, you know, and it was red for a minute. You know, it's not even like 30 seconds kind of thing, or you just bolted right through after it just changed. You know, there's still a lot of scenarios where drivers still get screwed. We get pulled out of that truck, even if people can say, oh my God, it was a guy running from the cops and he just plowed into that semi. You know, well, we got to drug test the driver. We got to breathalyze the driver. You know, we got to sit there and immediately figure out all his records. Like, you know, was he tired? Was he sick? what the fuck was he doing? You know, like he had to be at fault. You know, there's no way that nobody would have seen somebody speeding or drunk driving. And, you know, I mean, the most random scenarios can happen to drivers, and we're at fault. Always. You know, and I mean, there's obviously a lot of bad drivers out there. There's obviously a lot of good drivers out there. But at some point, the system, the industry has to say, wait a minute, let's take a step back. You know, I mean, I almost feel like as a truck driver, I'm kind of on borrowed time, you know, before some shit happens. Like, you know, it just, I don't know, it fucking sucks to feel that way. To feel that, like, you know, you could be a million miler and the day after you hit 1,000,000 miles, like, a drunk driver just hits you. Crazy guy driving around and, you know, speeding or something, whatever it is. You know, and that sucks. It really sucks. And you know, I feel like safety is more of a loss prevention department than they are a protect our drivers. It's about the load. We're a gear that gets the load from A to B. We're just a conveyor belt, you know. If the highways are a conveyor belt, we're the gear that gets it from A to B. That's what we are, you know. And what do you do with a broken gear? You replace it. What do you do with a gear that ain't working hard enough? You replace it, you know. I mean, it sucks with some of these megas and stuff. Like, I mean, I've been watching a lot of like Western Express videos, and it fucking sucks hearing what some of those guys go through, and girls. I mean, you know, like the fact that there's companies taking advantage of people, and they're like, oh, it's a second chance company. Second chance or not, you still deserve respect. You still deserve to make a good paycheck. You still deserve to be put in a piece of equipment that's working. You know, not everything can be perfect, obviously, but, you know, there should be minimums. It's set that, like, every driver working 70 hours a week, 40 hours a week, you should make this much money. You know, every driver that gets in a piece of equipment, 5 years old, 10 years old, 1 year old, whatever, like, there's obviously stuff that should be working, you know, and it shouldn't be, oh, you know, I've got a check engine. Like, I mean, there's so much electrical shit going on in these trucks that you can't predict some stuff, obviously. But to say that, like there's just so many videos of guys like, my bunk heater doesn't work with this company, and they refuse to fix it. I only have like optimized idle, and you know, it doesn't come on after this time, or I mean after this temperature, or between this period. I can only run the truck no more than 15 minutes a day, you know, and otherwise they start charging me for fuel. Like, and you're sending drivers out in the fucking cold, you know, in the fucking heat, and there's, well, get a sleeping bag, get a fan. Bro, like that, you can't just do that shit for everything. Like, you know, it's for what we put ourselves through physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like, you know, I mean, we're living a rough lifestyle. We're in a dangerous job. Yeah, it's a very chill job at times. Like, I get to listen to my music all day. You know, I don't have anybody really bugging me most of the time. You know, I get to see some pretty nice sights. It's cool. I get to drive a nice piece of equipment that I like, and it's going to be mine in a couple years. But at the same time, like, you know, thinking back as a company guy, like, you know, I was never really mistreated at Werner. I mean, the other companies I was at, I didn't really care for them too much. But overall, Werner, I felt was pretty good. But there were things that, like, I remember just wanting to just ask off and only work 4 days a week. And it wasn't that I wasn't reliable. It was just that some weeks I'm just burned out. I just mentally need to deal with the shit that me and my girlfriend are arguing about, that, you know, is going on with my family. And you know, I know a lot of companies say, well, we would understand that, just to keep us, you know, informed. But, you know, as a new driver, or even somebody that had maybe been there for a year or two, the lease option became a lot more enticing, because it was like, I have control over my schedule. I have control over my money, even a little bit. And, you know, as a company guy, I felt like I was pushed only so hard to make only so much. And when I wanted to take off and just say, like, I physically or mentally can't do this because I've just beaten my body up, or I'm just emotionally just drained, you know, due to the stresses at home or whatever, like, I didn't have that option, you know. And I know, like, we all want to make money out here, and we want to make a good living. We want like, we all probably want to retire and shit, but at the same time, like, at what cost? You know, like, are we going to sacrifice, like, our home time just to make an extra $200-300 a week? You know, and sometimes we got to. I mean, you know, if you got to work, you know, 7 days in a row, 1 week, just because you need an extra $300 because you had a breakdown in your car, or you got to pay this bill or something, you do it. You know, I understand it. But to be expected every week to work 70 hours or 65, 68, you know, and sometimes you're only bringing home $1,000. I mean, that's good money to a lot of people. And I would say the majority of people out there, it is. But, you know, if we're pushing ourselves that hard, I think a lot of times we should be getting more closer to $2,000 range. You know, a lot of the LTL guys are getting closer to 2,000, and they're not even working 70 hours a week. They're doing like 50 or 60, you know. And you look at how they're being treated with the unions, and it's like, oh my God. You know, I mean, in a lot of ways, I wish trucking was just unionized. Like, I mean, if we were more like air traffic controllers or something, you know, to where I obviously don't want to be paid by the government, because I mean, look at what goes on with them. When every time there's a government shutdown, they're one of the first people to get, you know, their paychecks garnished, or not garnished, but taken away, or at least held back. And same thing with the post office. But for the kind of industry we are, there needs to be some kind of nationalized effort, I think, to you know, one, owner operators and, you know, company guys, like, we're doing the same thing. We're all in it the same. We, you know, the pull for people want to be owner operators is just the control. You know, I'd almost say that, like, more people want to just do whatever they want to do without someone telling them how much they can run, how hard they can run. Like, they can be safe, but it's like, you know, I want to run where I want to run. I want to work in the accounts I want to work on. And, you know, if I want to retire or something, I got a piece of equipment I can sell. It's as an investment. You know, there's a lot of options. But I think there's also a big chunk of people that say, like, I want to make money. You know, I don't want somebody telling me how much I can or can't make. I'll do, you know, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years as a company guy, and then I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to go hard, and I'll push myself to the brink. I will pick the loads I want, and then I'll, you know, go OTR, whatever they got to do to bring in that cash. And I know a lot of guys are still breaking even that are owner operators, but, you know, maybe they feel a little bit better about it, and you know, the money they make, because they just don't feel as overwhelmed or something, but or pressured by a company. And I mean, there's good companies out there, and there's nothing wrong with being a company employee, unionized or non-unionized. Don't get me wrong. It's I just think there's a lot of these regulations are out of control. You know, they're really there to hold us back and say how much we can or can't make. I mean, when you think about, like, them wanting to put speed limiters on all these trucks, who's it going to hurt? Mostly the owner operators, because they're the ones running harder at 70 miles an hour. And I mean, really, and there's not like, oh my God, every owner operator I see in a Peterbilt 379 is just wrecking all over the road. No. A lot of times they're just dudes in mega carriers. They're not T-boning, but jackknifing. You know, they're hitting shit. I mean, you know, there's going to be wrecks regardless. You got to be safe. But a lot of these, like, regulations are pushed by the mega carriers. They're the ones saying, you know, hey, we don't want competition. They don't want competition, because if they can swoop up those accounts, the big paying ones, you know, look at the owner operator guys that are doing farm shit or like, you know, heavy haul stuff. They're making just killer money, and they're barely working. Barely. Well, I don't know, but I've heard a lot of stories and seen a lot of stuff online of just guys that are like, you know, I only work 3 to 6 months out of the year, you know, and I make good, like, I wouldn't say that they're making like $1 million kind of thing, but they're making money for that works for them. They're like, I don't want to be running 52 weeks out of the year. You know, I want to run hard enough that my bills are paid for, and I can live the rest of the year and have fun, and I think that's what a lot of us want to do. Like, if I could find a way to work 6 to 9 months out of the year, I totally would. I would totally do that. And it doesn't mean that I wouldn't work the remaining couple of months, but I would slow down. I would take it easy. I would have fun. I mean, I stuff that's been on my mind for weeks now has just been like with my family. Like my dad's got a blockage in an artery in his neck. He's been having brain issues and he's had multiple heart issues. I mean, he had like a stroke earlier last year, and I mean, he's already had a quadruple bypass and multiple stents. My mom had breast cancer over I think it was 2020, right in the heart of the pandemic. I had 2 friends kill themselves last year, and my uncle, he's had shortness of breath. He's like 85, something like that now. I mean, and one thing I keep thinking is like, who's next? Who is next? And it fucking sucks, because I've had that call from my mom saying like, hey, something's up with your father, and I'm sitting there in the truck and I'm calling the Air-Evac people to try and get them to get my dad to Memphis, and because I pay for this Air-Evac service because where my parents live. It takes about an hour to get from their house to the closest hospital. He was there in 45 minutes, and even in the closest hospital that he would get to is still an hour away from his hospital. It's one of those, like, if it's a major event, we can kind of assess him here and treat him a little bit, but we're going to take him somewhere bigger. And I remember just thinking like, oh my God, I'm all the way here in Missouri. Like, what am I supposed to do? I remember the first day after a close friend of mine had killed themselves, and I probably shouldn't have driven that day, or even that week, maybe the 2 weeks. I'm sorry, I just get emotional about it. But I was driving to I think it was North Little Rock. I just had a 20-foot trailer. It was one of those weeks I had to run because I'd only worked like maybe 2-3 days that week or something. And and it was when I found out it was just too late that I couldn't. I had like a 8 o'clock appointment or something like that. And I remember waking up early, and I had no way of calling my dispatch and just saying like, I am a disaster. And I remember pulling over a couple times and just breaking down and fucking losing it, because a soulmate and like one of my best friends had killed themselves, and it's shit like that, and just a week later I'd lost another friend, shot himself in the face or in the head, and it's events like that make trucking not worth it. That you sit there and say like, I could have done something. I should have been there. I should have called them, And I mean, there's a lot of things I would have done different. I wish I hadn't have been fatigued. The friend that shot himself, he had told me he was kind of suicidal, and he had supposedly tried to kill himself earlier in the year, and I thought it was a joke, and he'd hit me up the night before, but I'd had oral surgery, and that whole week it was like I was trying to play catch up because the week prior, and I was so physically drained. I just didn't want to get out of the house. I didn't want to do anything, and I'm home daily, and I'm working 12, 14 hours a day still. I'm lucky on the days I get 10 hours or 8 hours in a day, and it's there's a lot of days I feel like the money isn't worth it. The trouble isn't worth it, because I want life experiences. If it was cheaper to go and travel and see the world, have fun, do whatever, bet your ass I wouldn't be doing this. I mean, but I think in my head, somebody's got to be there for my family. If something happens, I want to know that I've got a safety net financially. I want to be able to get out of debt. you know, there's a lot of things I want, and they're not like a big screen TV or a fast car. I mean, there's obviously a lot of that stuff would be cool to have, but you know, for the most part, it's just I don't know. I don't know where I was kind of going. I feel like I kind of ranted and went off somewhere random. I don't even know if people are really watching these videos yet, but you know, they're just trucker thoughts, life, you know. But you know, me and the safety guy, I mean, we hung up on, you know, good terms, I guess. Like, it wasn't anything personal, obviously, and you know, I told him I'd try and talk to my dispatch and my fleet manager and stuff about some of these issues, and you know, I think he just doesn't have the full amount of information of what some of the mess I have to deal with the rail yards, and not being able to kind of control my clock in that sense, or what I do certain days. But yeah, you know, I don't know, maybe one day trucking will be I don't know, we'll have all banded together and done something. Hopefully not under the government's control, but yeah, you know, I don't know. If y'all made it this far and you liked it, hit a like button or just comment. I mean, I'm more curious to hear what people's thoughts are on all my rants and trucker talks are. Stay safe out there, y'all.